It was supposed to be just another quiet night at the Global Space Monitoring Station. The operators sat in their chairs, their eyes half focused on the blinking screens filled with data from satellites and deep space probes. Nothing unusual had happened in months, but then an alarm blared. Unidentified signal detected. One of the analysts shouted, his fingers flying over the keyboard. It's an Earth distress beacon. The room filled with whispers, a distress signal from deep space. That wasn't possible. Every ship in Earth's fleet was accounted for. The operator ran a code check, and his face turned pale. This can't be right. The signal is from Mission Odysseus. The name sent a shiver through the room. Mission Odysseus was a space exploration mission that launched 300 years ago. The lead astronaut, Captain Elias Carter, had disappeared without a trace. No wreckage had ever been found. No final transmission. Just vanished into the void. But now, after centuries, his emergency distress beacon was calling home. A ghost returns. Within hours, the United Earth Command had mobilized. The world watched as a small spacecraft appeared on the edge of the solar system, moving at impossible speeds. It was old, outdated by hundreds of years, but completely intact. And it was heading straight for Earth. Inside the United Earth Command headquarters, Admiral Jonathan Reeves and his team tracked the ship's descent. Scientists argued. Some believed it was a hoax. Others whispered about impossible theories. Time distortions, black holes, alien abduction. None of them were prepared for what happened next. As the spacecraft slowed and prepared to land at Lunar Base 1, the cameras zoomed in on the pilot's seat. The face on the screen was unmistakable. Captain Elias Carter. And he looked exactly the same as he did the day he left Earth -300 years ago. But there was something else. Someone else. Seated beside him was a woman, not human. She was tall and elegant, with shimmering silver skin and glowing violet eyes. A strange, futuristic suit covered her body, and on her forehead was a glowing emblem. An unknown symbol that no Earth scientist could recognize. The control room fell silent. Admiral Reeves took a deep breath. "Open the landing bay," he ordered, "and prepare for first contact." The landing. The spacecraft touched down with precision, as if it had never left. Security officers surrounded it, weapons lowered but ready. Scientists and medical teams stood by, unsure what to expect. The hatch hissed open. Elias Carter stepped out. He wore the same blue and white astronaut suit from 3 centuries ago. It was untouched by time. His face, his body, everything was the same. He wasn't an old man. He hadn't aged a day. And beside him, the alien woman moved with grace, her glowing eyes scanning the crowd. She showed no fear, no hesitation. Instead, she stood confidently next to Elias, as if she belonged by his side. Elias looked at the sky, then at the people before him. "I'm home," he whispered. Then his gaze shifted to Admiral Reeves, who stood waiting for answers. "Captain Carter," the Admiral said carefully, "you've been missing for 300 years." Elias nodded slowly. "I know." He turned to the woman beside him. She met his gaze, her violet eyes unreadable. "This is Ziara," he said. "She saved me." Questions without answers. For the next several hours, Elias and Ziara were taken to a secure facility at Earth's prime research center. Scientists ran scans, doctors took tests, and intelligence officers asked endless questions. Everything confirmed the impossible truth. Elias Carter was real. He was the same person who had left on Mission Odysseus 3 centuries ago. His DNA matched perfectly. His memories were intact. It was as if no time had passed for him at all. And Ziara. The scientists were speechless. Her biology was unlike anything they had ever seen. She was not part of any known alien species. Her technology was beyond understanding. She spoke fluent English, but her voice carried a strange melodic tone. Still, the biggest mystery remained. Where had Elias been all this time? And how had he survived? The warning. Hours passed. Elias sat in a quiet observation room, staring at the stars outside the window. Ziara stood beside him, her expression unreadable. Admiral Reeves entered. He sat across from them, his eyes filled with curiosity and suspicion. "Captain," the Admiral said, "the world needs to know the truth." Elias exhaled. "It's a long story." "Then start at the beginning," the Admiral said. "What happened to Mission Odysseus?" Elias glanced at Ziara. She gave a slight nod. He looked back at the Admiral. His voice was calm, but his words sent a chill through the room. "We were never supposed to return," he said. "And now, Earth may not be ready for what's coming." Elias Carter sat in a high-tech observation room, his hands resting on the metal table in front of him. The world outside had changed in ways he could barely understand. Tall skyscrapers floated above cities, spacecraft moved effortlessly through Earth's atmosphere, and artificial intelligence guided everyday life. But even with all these changes, one thing had not changed: the suspicion in the eyes of the people questioning him. Across from him, Admiral Jonathan Reeves folded his arms. The veteran officer had seen many strange things in his years of service, but this was something no one could explain. "You disappeared 300 years ago," Captain Reeves said. "No trace, no wreckage. And now, here you are. As if nothing happened. That's impossible." Elias leaned back in his chair. He understood their doubts. He himself had once been a man of logic, trained in science and reason. But after what he had seen, he knew that some things defied human understanding. "I know how this looks, Admiral," Elias said, his voice steady. "But I am Captain Elias Carter, and I have not aged because, for me, only a few years have passed." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Elias looked at Ziara, who stood silently near the window. Her silver skin shimmered faintly under the artificial light, her glowing violet eyes watching everything carefully. She gave Elias a small nod. He took a deep breath. "I was lost in a temporal rift. The fall into the unknown." Elias began to recount the events of Mission Odysseus. His team had been sent on a deep space mission to explore an uncharted region near a collapsed star. Everything was going as planned, until they encountered something they did not understand. A rift had opened in space, a swirling vortex of energy that pulled their ship in. One by one, his crew vanished. He remembered their screams, their desperate cries over the radio. Then, nothing. "When I woke up," Elias said, "I was in an unknown part of the galaxy. My ship was gone. My crew was gone. And I was alone, floating in the wreckage." That was when Ziara found him. Reeves turned his gaze to the alien woman. "And who exactly are you?" Ziara finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "I am Ziara of the Alari Dominion. My people exist beyond the flow of time as you understand it." The scientists in the room exchanged nervous glances, a species that existed beyond time. That was something out of legend, not science. Reeves frowned. "Why did you save him?" Ziara's glowing eyes softened slightly as she looked at Elias. "He did not belong in the void. He was a life out of place, something my people would usually never interfere with. But I did." Secrets of the Alari. Elias continued the story. Ziara had taken him to her world, a hidden civilization of immense power and knowledge. Their technology was so advanced that human science would take thousands of years to reach their level. "They control time," Elias said. "They do not age. They do not die the way we do." Reeves shook his head. "Then why haven't we heard of them before?" "Because," Ziara answered, "we do not interfere with civilizations that are still learning to walk." Elias clenched his fists. "But I shouldn't have been there. I was an anomaly. The rift should have killed me. Instead, it kept me in a state between time and space. Ziara saved me from that. She pulled me back." Reeves leaned forward. "Why now? Why did you come back to Earth after 300 years? Elias glanced at Ziara, then back at Reeves. Because something is coming. A dark arrival. Elias explained what he had learned in his time among the Elari. The temporal rift was not natural. Something had caused it to open. Something ancient, something powerful. There's something in deep space, Elias said. Something vast, something alive. Reeves and his team exchanged uncertain glances. The Admiral crossed his arms, studying Elias carefully. You expect us to believe that an ancient, time-controlling species just happened to save you? That this alien woman pulled you from the rift and nursed you back to health? Elias shook his head. No. Ziara saved me, but not just out of kindness. Her people have fought this enemy before. Ziara's voice was soft, but her words carried a weight that sent a chill through the room. The Voidborn are coming. The threat from the dark. Ziara closed her eyes, and a glowing holographic display appeared in the air above the table. A map of the galaxy formed, showing a web of stars and worlds. Long ago, my people waged war against creatures from beyond time. They are void dwellers, entities that consume entire civilizations. The projection shifted, showing a dark, writhing mass slowly creeping through space, devouring entire planets. Where they passed, nothing remained, only empty void, like a wound in the universe. They cannot be stopped by conventional means, she continued. They do not exist in a single timeline. They devour time itself, rewriting reality as they move. Elias clenched his fists. That's what happened to me. When the rift swallowed my ship, time changed. My crew was erased, but something went wrong. I wasn't supposed to survive. Reeves frowned. You're saying this. Voidborn is heading for Earth. Ziara nodded. Yes. It is drawn to anomalies. Elias is one of them now. He carries something with him. Something it wants. Elias closed his eyes. He could still feel the hum of Elthis, the world where he had been saved, the world that taught him what lay beyond time. The things he had seen there, the knowledge he had gained. He knew Earth was not ready. Ziara's voice softened. You must listen carefully. We did not just bring Elias back for his sake. We brought him back because he is the only one who can help stop what's coming. Reeves frowned. And what is coming? Ziara turned her gaze toward the glass walls, as if watching for something beyond them. We call them the Voidborn, creatures of the space between time. The more they consume, the stronger they become. She looked directly at the Admiral, and Elias was their first taste of Earth. A heavy silence filled the room. Reeves, the scientists, even the guards, exchanged nervous glances. For the first time since his return, Elias saw something he had never seen before. Genuine fear in the eyes of humanity's leaders. The room remained silent after Elias's last words. The air was thick with tension. Admiral Reeves sat motionless, his piercing gaze fixed on Elias. Explain, he finally said. Elias nodded. The temporal rift I was trapped in. It was a wound in time itself. The Voidborn feed on space and time. They consume everything. Planets, civilizations, even history itself. The rift was their doing. Reeves glanced at his officers, their faces pale. And why does this thing care about Earth? Elias exhaled. Because I came from here. The Admiral raised an eyebrow. They sensed me. Elias continued, his voice filled with a strange certainty. To them, I was different. I existed in a way they did not understand. And that made them curious. Ziara finally spoke, her voice smooth like flowing water. When I found him, the Voidborn had already begun analyzing his existence. That is what they do. They study before they consume. And once they consume, they'd make the past unravel. One of the scientists, a woman with short black hair and a worried expression, adjusted the scanner in her hands. She looked at Elias with growing unease. Sir, she said, turning to Reeves, his DNA is changing. Elias met their gaze. He had known this moment would come. My body is not the same, he admitted. The Voidborn. They tried to unmake me. But instead, something else happened. Ziara watched him closely. You resisted. Reeves folded his arms. Resisted what? Elias exhaled. I don't know how to explain it, but something inside me fought back. I felt like I was being ripped apart and rewritten, but I didn't disappear. I held on. I don't think that's ever happened before. And now, the Voidborn. They're coming to see why. The threat revealed. The scientists in the room looked at one another, whispering. They were analyzing the data Ziara had provided, cross-checking it with the ship's logs, and everything was coming back with one terrifying conclusion. Something was coming. Something big. And it was looking for Earth. Ziara lifted a hand and summoned another hologram. A shifting black mass appeared in the air above the table. It had no defined form, constantly changing, sometimes swirling like a storm, sometimes stretching like living shadows. This is the Voidborn, she said. They do not belong in this universe. They consume time itself. If they reach Earth, they won't just kill you. They will erase you from history. It will be as if humanity never existed. A heavy silence filled the room. The scientists' faces were pale. Reeves remained still, his mind racing. Finally, he spoke. How long do we have? Ziara met his gaze. Not long. The gift of time. Elias knew this was the hardest part. The part that no one would believe. But he had to say it. I am different now, he said, looking at his hands. When Ziara saved me, something happened. The Voidborn's attack changed me. The scientists stared at him. What do you mean? One asked. I don't age anymore, Elias said. But it's more than that. I can feel time. I can see glimpses of possible futures. Reeves's face darkened. Are you saying you can see the future? Not exactly. More like I can sense it. I know what's supposed to happen next. I can see possible versions of the future. Elias's voice turned grim. And in all of them, if we don't act, Earth is erased. There won't even be a memory of us. Reeves leaned back, trying to process the weight of what he had just heard. We have weapons, fleets, a strong military, he said. Are you telling me none of that will matter? Ziara's expression darkened, not against them, against time itself. Elias stood, his hands planted firmly on the table. We need to act now. If we don't prepare, if we don't evolve, Earth will be nothing but an echo in the past. Reeves exhaled, staring at the two figures sitting before him. The man who had returned from the dead, and the alien who had saved him. A decision had to be made. And fast. The control room of Earth's Global Defense Command buzzed with tension. Holographic displays flickered, showing real-time data from deep space observatories. Scientists whispered nervously, military officers exchanged grim looks, and in the center of it all, Admiral Jonathan Reeves stood with his arms crossed, staring at a screen that showed something moving through the void of space. Elias Carter and Ziara stood beside him, watching as well. The approaching force had no shape, no defined structure, just a swirling black void, expanding and contracting as if it were breathing. They are close, Ziara said, her voice calm but firm. Much closer than I expected. Reeves exhaled, rubbing his temples. And you're certain this thing, these Voidborn, aren't just some kind of strange alien fleet? Elias shook his head. No ships, no armies, just destruction. They don't conquer planets, Admiral. They erase them. A young scientist, Dr. Anya Patel, turned from her station. Her face was pale. Sir, the rift energy is increasing. If our calculations are correct, they'll reach our solar system in less than a week. Reeves's jaw tightened. And what happens when they arrive? Ziara's glowing violet eyes dimmed slightly. Then time itself will begin to break. The impossible plan. Reeves paced the room, his military mind working through options. Earth had weapons, powerful weapons. But how do you fight something that doesn't even exist in normal space? What about energy weapons? One of the generals suggested. Could we burn them out? Ziara shook her head. They are not made of matter or energy. They are pure anomaly, a disturbance in reality itself. Elias clenched his fists. Then we fight them with something just as unnatural. Reeves narrowed his eyes. You have something in mind. Elias turned to Ziara. Your people, your technology. It exists beyond time, right? Ziara hesitated, then nodded. Yes, we have technology that interacts with time itself. Then that's what we need. Elias said. We don't attack them with weapons. We attack them with time. The room fell silent. Dr. Patel was the first to break it. Wait, are you suggesting we use time as a weapon? Elias nodded. If the Voidborn consume time, then we need to trap them in it. Reeves ran a hand down his face. How exactly do you plan to do that? Ziara exhaled, considering. There may be a way, but it is dangerous. She lifted a hand, and a holographic diagram of a device appeared in the air. It looked like a massive ring, glowing with shifting blue energy. This is a temporal stabilizer. My people use them to repair damage in the time stream. Elias studied the image. Could we modify it? Turn it into a containment field? Ziara frowned. It would require an enormous amount of power, and someone to activate it from within. The meaning of her words settled over them like a heavy weight. Whoever activated the device might not escape. Elias swallowed hard. I'll do it. Ziara turned sharply to him. No. Elias met her gaze. I'm the only one who's already touched their influence. I survived the rift. I might be able to survive again. Reeves folded his arms. This is suicide. Elias smiled faintly. I've already been lost once, Admiral. I think I can handle it. Ziara looked away, her expression unreadable. But her fingers curled into fists. The final countdown. Work began immediately. The temporal stabilizer was built in Earth's orbit, a massive structure floating just beyond the moon. Ziara guided human engineers, showing them alien methods, pushing their technology to the limits. Every passing hour, the Voidborn came closer. Strange disturbances were already affecting deep space probes. Some satellites vanished from records, as if they had never existed. Elias could feel the pressure in his bones. His mind tingled with something he didn't understand. A sense of shifting time. A futures changing before his eyes. The Voidborn were aware of him. And they were coming. The moment of truth. 6 days later, the final preparations were complete. The temporal stabilizer was online. Elias stood in the launch bay, dressed in an advanced exosuit designed to withstand extreme space conditions. He looked out at the darkness beyond the window, at the storm of shadows moving toward Earth. Ziara appeared beside him. You don't have to do this. Elias smirked. You keep saying that, but I think we both know I do. She didn't smile back. Instead, she stepped forward and placed a hand over his chest, right over his heart. For 3 centuries, my people have watched the universe. We have never interfered. But I broke that rule. For you. Elias felt a strange warmth at her touch. Why? Ziara hesitated, then whispered, because you refused to disappear. The launch siren blared. It was time. Elias stepped into the pod, sealing the hatch behind him. The engines roared to life, and the final mission of Elias Carter began. As the pod launched toward the massive containment ring, Elias knew one thing for sure. This was either the end of the Voidborn or the end of Earth. The small spacecraft shuddered as it pierced through the black void, heading straight for the temporal stabilizer floating in high orbit above Earth. Inside the cockpit, Elias Carter gripped the controls tightly, his breath steady but his pulse racing. The mission was simple in theory. Reach the stabilizer, activate the field, and trap the Voidborn before they could reach Earth. But he knew the reality was far from simple. Through the cockpit window, the swirling shadow storm of the Voidborn loomed closer. It had no shape, no face, just a shifting absence of existence, a thing that devoured time itself. Elias could feel it. The closer he got, the more his mind buzzed with strange whispers. Memories flickered, moments from his life blinking in and out like old film reels skipping frames. The Voidborn were trying to unravel him. He clenched his jaw. Not this time. A soft voice came through the comms. Zyara. You are nearing the stabilizer, she said. Even through the static, her voice was steady, but Elias could hear something else beneath it. Worry. Copy that. Elias responded, adjusting the controls. His ship slowed as it neared the massive circular structure, glowing with shifting blue light. Below him, Earth looked peaceful, unaware of the battle that was about to begin. Admiral Reeves's voice came through the channel next. Elias, once you activate that field, we won't be able to pull you out. You sure about this? Elias smirked slightly. I was sure the first time you asked, Admiral. A short silence. Then Reeves said, Good luck, son. Elias exhaled. Yeah, I think I'm gonna need it. The arrival of the Voidborn. As soon as Elias exited his ship and floated toward the stabilizer, the darkness moved. The Voidborn surged forward, the space around them warping like a broken mirror. The stars behind them bent and twisted, as if being erased from existence. The stabilizer's warning alarms blared. Time was running out. Elias reached the central console of the device. He could see the glowing core, the heart of the machine, pulsing with raw energy. This wasn't just alien technology. It was something beyond normal physics, a force that could bend time itself. He placed his hand on the activation panel. The system hummed to life, symbols shifting across the screen. A countdown appeared. 30 seconds until activation. The final choice. Elias looked up. The Voidborn were almost upon him. For a brief second, everything froze. And then, a voice. Not spoken, not heard, but felt deep in Elias's mind. Why do you resist? The words were not human. They carried no emotion, no anger, no curiosity, just a cold, hollow awareness. Elias gritted his teeth. Because I don't feel like being erased today. The Voidborn shifted, as if considering his response. You are an anomaly. You should not exist. Yet you remain. Elias felt his heart pound. He knew what they meant. He had been caught in their rift for hundreds of years. But he had survived. Changed. He was something they had never encountered before. Maybe that was why they had followed him back. Maybe that was why they were afraid. He smirked. Yeah, well, humans are full of surprises. The countdown hit 5 seconds. Elias took a deep breath. This was it. 4. The Voidborn lunged. 3. Zara's voice echoed through the comms. Elias. 2. Elias reached out and slammed his palm onto the final activation button. 1. A blinding blue shockwave exploded outward. Time collapses. The impact hit everything. The Voidborn froze mid-motion, their shifting darkness breaking apart as the temporal field surged. The stabilizer's energy wrapped around them, twisting time into an unbreakable loop. The stars flickered. The space around Elias bent and cracked. He felt himself being pulled into the loop. His body shook. His mind burned. But he held on. He wasn't going to disappear. He had come too far for that. Then, silence. The Voidborn were gone, trapped, frozen in time, and Elias Carter was falling. A hero's sacrifice. The comms were filled with voices. Reeves was shouting orders. Ziara was calling his name. But Elias barely heard them. His suit's systems were failing. Gravity was pulling him toward Earth. He had no ship, no way to slow down. He was going to burn up on re-entry. For a moment, he let out a short laugh. At least I saved them. And then, a flash of silver light. Elias's body stopped mid-fall. Something, or someone, was holding him. His blurry vision cleared, and he saw Ziara, floating in space, her eyes glowing bright, her form surrounded by a soft white energy. "You didn't think I would let you go that easily, did you?" she said. Elias blinked. "You caught me." Ziara smirked. "I told you. I broke the rules for you." The last thing Elias saw before darkness took him was Ziara holding him close, guiding them both safely back to Earth. Elias Carter opened his eyes to bright white lights. For a moment, he thought he was back in the void, lost in nothingness. But then he felt the softness of a medical bed beneath him. The faint peeping of machines filled the air. His body felt strange, lighter, stronger, different. Slowly, he sat up. His suit was gone, replaced by a simple medical uniform. The walls around him were smooth, metallic, and glowing with soft blue light. This wasn't a hospital on Earth. "Where am I?" he muttered. A voice answered, "You're safe." Elias turned. Ziara stood near the doorway, watching him. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Her glowing violet eyes were unreadable, but Elias could sense something, relief, maybe, worry. Then she stepped closer. "You nearly burned up in re-entry. I had to use extra measures to stabilize you." Elias raised an eyebrow. Extra measures. She hesitated, then pressed a control on the wall. A holographic display appeared beside the bed. It showed his body. Elias frowned. At first, everything looked normal. But then he noticed the energy readings around his nervous system, small pulses of blue light flowing through his veins. "What is that?" he asked. Ziara's expression was serious. The temporal field didn't just trap the Voidborn. She paused. "It left something inside you." Elias stiffened. "Inside me?" She nodded. "You were caught in the center of the anomaly. Your body absorbed some of the energy." Elias looked down at his hands. He flexed his fingers. Nothing felt wrong, but deep inside, he sensed something was different. He turned back to Ziara. "What does this mean?" She exhaled. "I don't know yet, but you are no longer just human, Elias. A new threat." Before Elias could process that, a sharp alarm blared through the room. Ziara's expression darkened. She turned toward the doorway. "Stay here." Elias pushed himself off the bed. "Not a chance." Ziara hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. Just be careful." She led him down a hallway filled with floating holographic symbols and strange technology. Elias recognized the elegant design of her people, the Lethari. This wasn't just any medical bay. This was a hidden Lethari base. As they entered the command center, Admiral Reeves appeared on a communication screen. His expression was grim. "Carter," he said, "good to see you awake." Elias crossed his arms. "What's going on?" Reeves glanced at Ziara, then back at Elias. "We have a problem." He pressed a button, and a hologram of space appeared in front of them. It showed the Earth, and something moving toward it. Elias's stomach dropped. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." Reeves exhaled. "It's not the Voidborn, but it's connected." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a fleet of massive black and silver ships, each one glowing with faint traces of the same energy that had infected Elias. Ziara's expression darkened. "The Watchers." Elias frowned. "The who?" She turned to him. "The Watchers are an ancient race. They observe, but never interfere." She narrowed her eyes. "Until now." Reeves leaned forward. "They sent a message. They want to talk to one person." Elias had a sinking feeling. Me. The Watchers arrive. A few hours later, Elias stood on the surface of the moon, watching as the first Watcher ship descended. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of any Earth battleship, but it made no sound as it landed. The hull shifted like liquid metal, constantly reshaping itself. A portal opened. From the darkness inside, 3 figures emerged. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with smooth silver skin and featureless faces except for 2 glowing white eyes. Their robes shimmered, flowing like mist. The tallest of them stepped forward. Elias felt a strange pressure in his mind. Not pain, but a presence. They were speaking without words. Then the voice came. "Elias Carter, you have touched the fabric of time itself." Elias held his ground. "Yeah, that tends to happen when you're trying to stop the end of the world." The Watcher didn't react. "You are an anomaly. Your existence is unstable. If left unchecked, you could fracture reality itself." Elias clenched his fists. "So what? You came all this way just to tell me I'm a danger." The Watcher's glowing eyes didn't blink. "We came to decide your fate." Ziara stepped beside Elias. "You can't just decide what happens to him. He saved this world." The Watcher turned its head slightly. "That is the problem." Elias narrowed his eyes. "You think I should have died." Silence. Then, a single nod. "You should not exist." Elias felt a chill go through him. For the first time since his return to Earth, he realized the truth. He wasn't supposed to be here. The Voidborn had erased him. The temporal field had changed him. He was something else now. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let anyone decide his fate for him. He stepped forward. "Well, I do exist. And I'm not going anywhere." The Watcher tilted its head. "Then prove that you are not a threat." Elias crossed his arms. "And how exactly do I do that?" The Watcher's white eyes flickered. "You must come with us." Ziara's eyes widened. "No." Elias hesitated. "And if I refuse?" The Watcher's voice was calm. "Then we will erase you." A heavy silence filled the air. Elias glanced at Ziara, then at the earth and the sky above them. He had spent hundreds of years lost in time. Now he had finally come home. And now he had to leave again. He exhaled slowly, then turned back to the Watchers. "Fine," he said. "Let's see what you have to say." Ziara grabbed his wrist. "Elias, no." He gave her a small smile. "Don't worry. I'll be back." The Watchers turned, walking back toward their ship. Elias took one last look at Earth. Then he stepped into the unknown once again. Elias sat in complete silence, his hands bound by glowing energy restraints. The Watcher's ship was like nothing he had ever seen before, massive, dark, and endless inside, as if it stretched far beyond its own dimensions. The air was thick and still, as if time itself had slowed down inside this place. The lead Watcher, the one who had spoken to him on the moon's surface, stood before him. Its glowing white eyes never blinked. "You do not belong," the Watcher stated, voice echoing in Elias's mind. "Your existence is a paradox. The Voidborn should have erased you." Elias crossed his arms, his pulse steady. "Well, I'm still here. And I'm not going to let you erase me." The Watcher tilted its head. "That is not your decision to make." The room around them shifted, the dark walls rippling like liquid. Elias felt a pull, something deep inside him responding to the ship's strange energy. His vision flickered. For a split second, he saw thousands of versions of himself, as if he existed in every possible reality at once. It made his head spin. The Watcher continued, "You do not understand what you are, Elias Carter. The temporal field that bound the Voidborn, it also changed you. You are no longer a single existence. You are—" The Watcher hesitated, then finished, "many." Elias's pulse quickened. What does that even mean? The Watcher extended a long silver hand toward him. The air crackled with energy. "We will show you the truth of the multiverse." The walls of the chamber dissolved into a sea of stars, swirling galaxies, shifting timelines. Elias saw himself, thousands of versions of himself, some older, some younger, all flickering in and out of focus. In one reality, He was an old man, sitting in a quiet house by the sea. In another, he was a legendary war hero, leading humanity's forces against alien invaders. In yet another, he was still lost in space, drifting through the void alone. You exist everywhere, the Watcher said, and yet you are one. That is an impossibility. Elias swallowed. He didn't want to be an anomaly. He just wanted to go home. What do you want from me? He asked. The Watcher extended a silver hand. A vision filled his mind. A terrible rupture in space, darkness bleeding through it. The Voidborn were not dead. They were trapped, but their prison was cracking. You have become a key, the Watcher said. You hold the power to decide the fate of all realities. You must seal the rift, or be erased. Elias's hands curled into fists. And if I help you, what then? The Watcher's gaze burned into him. We will allow you to live, but you will not return to Earth. Elias's stomach clenched. Never go home. Never see Ziara again. Never stand on Earth's soil, feel its wind, hear the voices of his own people. Ziara, what would happen to her? No. No deal, Elias said. The Watchers didn't move. You refuse. Yeah, I refuse. His eyes narrowed. You say I'm dangerous. You say I shouldn't exist. But I'm here, and I'm not your enemy. I fought to save my people. I fought to stop the Voidborn. He pointed at them. What have you done? You just watched. For the first time, the lead Watcher blinked. Just once. A pause. Then it spoke. Come with us. Before Elias could react, the world vanished. The last stand. Elias opened his eyes to darkness. He was standing in the middle of a great cosmic storm, surrounded by swirling shadows. The Voidborn prison was breaking. He could feel it, deep in his bones. The power inside him resonated with the rupture. The lead Watcher's voice echoed. Seal the fracture. Elias gritted his teeth. How? A single word echoed through the void. Sacrifice. He suddenly understood. They wanted him to become the lock, to throw himself into the rift and use whatever energy was inside him to seal the Voidborn away forever. Elias clenched his fists. The weight of it crushed him. He thought of Earth. He thought of Ziara. She had saved him, and now he would never see her again. A hand touched his arm. He turned. Ziara. She was there. Her violet eyes searched his, full of something unspoken, uncertain. How did you get here? Elias asked. I followed, she said softly. I had to. The Watchers stirred. It is time. The swirling rupture behind them was growing. The Voidborn were pushing against their prison, trying to break free. Shadows flickered behind the cracks, twisting and writhing, whispering. Elias took a breath. He could feel the energy inside him, the power of the temporal field still flowing in his veins. He looked back at Ziara. I don't think I'm coming back. Her fingers tightened around his wrist. I won't let you go alone. Elias's eyes widened. Ziara. I broke every law of my people to save you, she said. I won't let you do this alone. The Voidborn began to push through the cracks, their shadows spilling out into real space. Their whispering voices filled the void, 100 layered echoes at once. Elias could feel their hunger, their rage. They wanted him. They wanted his power. He turned back to Ziara. What if? I can stop this. He looked down at his hands, feeling the energy surging inside him. But I need you to trust me. She nodded. Always. Elias closed his eyes. He reached out, not with his hands, but with his mind. The energy inside him responded. The Voidborn howled as he grasped the edges of time itself. The rift began to close. The darkness screamed as it was dragged away, swallowed by its own creation. But it was pulling him in two. Ziara tightened her grip on his hand. No, she whispered. You're not going alone. Elias tried to pull away, but she wouldn't let go. Ziara, don't do this. She smiled softly. You don't understand, do you? Her energy wrapped around both of them. Then everything went white. The new beginning. Elias gasped as he opened his eyes. He was standing on Earth. He blinked in shock, feeling solid ground beneath his feet. Blue sky stretched overhead. The grass swayed in a gentle breeze. He turned. Ziara was beside him. "We did it," she said softly. Elias stared at her, then at himself. The blue energy flowing through his body was gone. The strange feeling had faded. He was just human again. Ziara smiled. The field took the Voidborn, but it couldn't take you. Elias exhaled. He looked at his hands, still there, still solid. He was home, and he wasn't alone. For the first time in a long time, Elias let himself relax. He looked up at the sky, the stars still shining, still there. Humanity had won, and as Ziara reached out to hold his hand, he smiled. It was good to be home.